So all this month we're doing So Many Sweethearts, which is our little romance Valentine's theme. I believe last week was Valentine's Day, but the love continues through the month, right? Last week we talked about Her, which was my pick. I did it again. Hearts on screen for the YouTube audience. I don't know how to do that. I can't either.
Doesn't work for me.
We tried.
I have the power. I have the power.
It happens.
But yeah, not the singer Her, but the movie Her.
No. Yes, this is the movie Her we talked about last week. Go back and watch that on our channel or in your podcast app if you'd like. But this week, and we also have done Return to Me, which was a movie from 2000 starring David Duchovny and Minnie Driver. It was another fun one that was kind of new to all of us, so that was pretty interesting. Go back and check that out.
Yeah, it's a good show.
We've got today's movie, which is When Harry Met Sally, which we'll get into very shortly. But we also are going to wrap up the month with our fan pick, and we've got a bunch of suggestions from you guys. David, you want to read some of those off? Just let them know what they're going to be able to vote on?
Yeah. So you'll find out the full list when we put it up for vote. But just to throw some out there, we got some from Threads. We got some from Garrett. Got some personally on Facebook. So we have a couple of like old school classics, like Bringing Up Baby and The Roman Holiday, as well as The Philadelphia Story. We've got some newer films like Happy Anniversary, as well as Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Moonstruck, starring Cher. I'm kind of like low-key, kind of rooting for Moonstruck myself. But also, some classics of the genre, your Sleepless in Seattle, your You've Got Mail, your 13 Going on 30, Always Be My Maybe, P.S. I Love You is also in there. Fever Pitch, the movie that won the Red Sox the World Series.
Yeah.
Crazy Rich Asians, which I saw last year. Not too bad. So I wouldn't mind revisiting that. And also While You Were Sleeping, which is kind of like I've seen that one too recently. That is a wild premise for a movie. So very much in the vein of Return to Me, but like I think does the thing a little bit more. Like does like the whereas Return to Me had like, oh, it's his wife's heart transplant. This is like, oh no, this gets really awkward. The situation gets very stressful. Anyway, so we'll have way more than that, and we'll be putting up votes on that on our social media. At the very least, Threads and Instagram, probably Facebook as well.
Yeah, go check those out at So Many Sequels Pod on Instagram, Threads, and Facebook, and TikTok. We're on all of those. But like I said, this week we're going to talk about When Harry Met Sally, a modern classic of the rom-coms from the 80s. I was going to say the year, but then I realized I didn't know it. What's the
Maybe
year?
less modern. 1989.
89. Gonna get into that here in just a second. But David, why don't you tell us a little bit about the box office history of When Harry Met Sally?
Well, When Harry Met Sally, it opened July 14th, 1989. It would get its wide release a week later. Its first weekend, it only opened in 41 theaters to $1 million. That was good enough for the number 14 spot, which an amazing list of films, by the way. I might read all 13 that are ahead of it, because at number 1, you have Lethal Weapon 2 that weekend, followed by Batman, followed by Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, followed by License to Kill, followed by a 1989 re-release of Peter Pan, Disney's Peter Pan, followed by Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, followed by Ghostbusters 2, followed by Dead Poets Society, followed by Weekend at Bernie's. Like, this was a stacked year.
89 was an incredible
Do the Right
year.
Thing, The Karate Kid, Field of Dreams was just ahead of it. So anyway, during its wide release a week later, the movie actually jumped all the way up to the number 3 spot with $8.8 million, which was still good enough to finish number 3 behind Batman and Lethal Weapon 2. Also that weekend, UHF came out. You guys, we have a little personal history of that. We met Weird Al when he came to Rogers State to talk a little bit about UHF.
Twinkie Wiener Sandwich Man, go eat one.
So anyway, it would go on. It would stay in wide release for pretty much the rest of its run. It was in theaters for quite a while and ended up finishing with $92 million in the U.S. During its domestic run. No overseas release. You got to remember, overseas releases weren't common until about midway through the 90s. It was kind of Titanic that really sparked that particular craze of the international release. For the year of 1989, your number 1 film of the year as you might expect, was Batman, as previously mentioned. And coming in just behind it was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Lethal Weapon 2, Look Who's Talking. And then, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. We've done a few movies in 1989 before. We did Back to the Future Part 2, one of our first podcasts. I wasn't there for that, but one of our first podcasts. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which was my first podcast on so many sequels. And then the last time we were in 1989 was for National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation so many Santas ago. So nice to be back in the 80s.
It is, isn't it?
And that's all I got.
I was also originated in 1989, so
that's true.
Special connection to me.
All right, let's get into it. Let's get into When Harry Met Sally, which Letterboxd describes as, can two friends sleep together and still love each other in the morning? During their travel from Chicago to New York, Harry and Sally debate whether or not sex ruins a friendship between a man and a woman. 11 years later, and they're still no closer to finding the answer. This movie stars just an all-star cast, in my opinion. Billy Crystal, Meg Ryan, Carrie Fisher. David, you picked this movie for this week.
I did.
Tell us why.
By threat of violence. No.
That gets the job done.
My wife loves When Harry Met Sally. That's the first off. So she was campaigning for that the last time we did So Many Sweethearts back in February 2022, I think. And
you went with the classic Ghost of Girlfriend's Past or whatever you call that.
That's because I was relying on you guys for to bring in the classics, and it was a bad move. We watched Ghost of Girlfriend's Past, not a good move, but this time made the right call. Wife was very happy to watch When Harry Met Sally. I had seen it once before, probably 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, somewhere in that time frame. And I remember at the time feeling like it was a lot longer, but I was actually really impressed by how much it, I don't want to say fully held up, because I think that in a lot of ways it has kind of dated ideas, but it still was entertaining. It was still funny. It was still an interesting conversation starter for a lot of things that they talk about in the movie, just to have with your wife or with a friend. So I think it's a really fun movie. I think it's a really good movie, and I think it was a good one to pick for something like this. I think most people rank it high on their top 10s, rom-coms of all time. So, I was really excited to check it out and see what you guys thought. Had you guys seen it before?
Garrett, why don't you go?
I had not seen it before. This is my first viewing of the classic When Harry Met Sally. Again, growing up, the rom-com genre was not one that I was interested in, because those were for girls and boys didn't watch it. And I missed out on so many good movies. Because yes, David, this was a good pick, and I see why many people say that it is a classic. And for me, this definitely wasn't exactly what I was expecting. And I think that is because I don't really know. I'm formulating this as I say it, so work with me here. But it is one of those things where it feels like what a rom-com has become so satirical that this movie I expected to be the one that kicked that off. And to go through and watch it have and be a movie of substance with thought and character, and not just be a movie of the memes, it was really good and refreshing to watch. So it kind of threw me for a loop in a really nice way.
There you go, Josh.
All right, excellent. Yeah, I had seen When Harry Met Sally before, a couple times at least. It's not one that's it's heavy in my rotation a lot, but I've seen it. And look, it's a great movie. We could sit here and try to be like, well, let's examine it. We could, but it's a good movie at the end of the day. Like, it just is. And because it is like it went the... Garrett, when you talk about you were afraid that it might be like the originator of the what rom-coms have become, a meme factory. It's like this is what happens when that goes right. Like the original was good, and then we devolved into satire versus just kind of like starting with something that was just kind of stupid popular. This movie is really good and well written, well acted, well directed. I think it's great. I'm excited to talk about it in more detail. It explores this. I really love that it explores this age-old question of, can men and women be friends? That's to call it a common trope isn't even like doing that justice. It's the trope that you'll ruin the friendship or whatever, and it can't happen, or someone's always interested more than the other. Like it's the age-old rom-com setup to me. But they handle it so well in here. I love that we see them go through eras of their life and how they interact. I don't know. There's a lot to like about it.
Yeah, well, let's just launch in first with the story itself about this couple that they meet sort of in a happenstance scenario. They're both going to New York, and so as sort of a rideshare, a 1970s era rideshare scheme, they travel together, and they interact on the drive, and these two characters kind of clash a little bit. We can do this a little bit while talking about the characters as well, but Harry, he's your classic know-it-all. I just graduated from college. I'm 23 years old, and I understand the full human experience kind of person. And meanwhile, you have Meg Ryan's Sally character, who's a little bit more reserved, a little bit more willing to, accept that, people have, like there's a positive spin on things. And there's a clash there between those two on a lot of different subjects. But there is an an indistinguishable chemistry. They seem to feed off of each other's energy, both good and bad. So that grows over the years, and it's a movie that takes place over the course of 12 years. Like, that's a aspect that I don't think is highlighted often when people think about the movie. They think about just the ending or the last few scenes, but it starts in 1977 and it ends in 1989. So that's really cool. So what did you guys think about the story and the characters?
I really appreciated them both. I mean, Josh, I think that you said something about Harry being a catch at any point in time in this movie, and I disagree with you because he was not a catch at the beginning of this movie. He was a dick.
The only thing I can say to that is you were in particular referencing, I believe, that ass.
Well, fair enough.
To which I said, he's a catch in every era.
When he turns, when he reaches into the back seat and it's just full moon, it was like,
yeah.
Of course, he's definitely more dickish in the beginning when he is that smarmy college guy, fresh out of college.
Yeah, but that's, again, I think that we can see, again, this is our third movie of our So Many Sweethearts, and one of the things that has been a through line, I think, for me this year is I think we've done a good job of picking movies that focus on the characters. It's not just about the love story. It's not about them falling in love. It's not about them finding the one. Mm-hmm. Each character has their own focused and thought out journey that leads them to something and or someone. Mm-hmm. And I think that this movie, again, does a really good job of that. You see them at the end of college where neither one of them have lived, but they both think they have. And you're right, they have such different outlooks on life. And as they go through, both of them go through highs and lows, and they have these lived experiences. And at these just seemingly random moments, they run into these strangers who they are kind of connected with, and they're the most honest with those strangers because they have they have enough familiarity with each other, and they're comfortable enough, and that means something. And so you see that just honesty be able to connect them over time in these random moments and grow from there. And it was really cool. I really appreciated the storytelling that they put into it.
Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that. When it comes to the characters, I really love watching their evolution. I in particularly love how they evolve within the framework of the friend relationship question. You know, it's Harry who is adamant that a man and woman cannot be friends without sex ruining it, or one of them wanting to ruin it. And Sally is the one who's like, no, I think that's crazy, yada yada. When Harry gets engaged, though, he's like, well, you can be friends if one of them's married. He starts to open up to this idea, right? Mm-hmm. So I really like that move. Yeah. I like seeing that evolution of the characters throughout it, too. It is more of a story about them than the romance. You're right. It's just way more fun that way. This movie also, though, has something I really enjoy, which is, obviously, any good rom-com has to have a wingman, but I feel this one has dual wingmans in Carrie Fisher and her husband, who are
Bruno
basically
Kirby.
rooting...
Yeah.
Yes, who are basically both rooting for this to happen in tandem next to each other, while the other two don't know it, for the most part.
Well, they're getting together as blind dates for the opposite, for Harry and for Sally,
Right.
and then them just those relationships not clicking, but then somehow like just they click with each other. It's such a I don't know why, but when it happens, even though I've seen it before, I was like, oh yeah, this should happen. These two should be the one. These two should definitely get together. And I love too this. I didn't mean to break out with this scene, but when they're talking and she's like, hey, Harry's been through a lot, so just don't call him tonight. Like, like she's already saying like, like, look, I get it. You don't like the other guy, it's whatever. And Bruno's in the same thing. Oh, I'm not going to call him tonight. Don't worry about it. And then they walk over and he goes, well, I'm going to get out of here. She goes, oh, I'll go with you. They just jump in a cab and they're gone. Hell. It was hilarious. There was so much about this movie that's like that kind of comedic timing, and a lot of the other stuff that Crystal does in this movie are still hilarious. Like particularly when they're at the ball game. I think Garrett, you might have brought this one up too. When they're at the ball game and Billy Crystal's kind of like laying it out, like, yeah, she left me. She said she wasn't in love anymore. And then they do the wave in the middle of it.
The voice really threw me off. I almost heard some Billy in there for a second.
I'm working on it. They're working on it a little bit.
But see, what I actually liked about that scene for me was because it showed, again, I think I have heard some pushback. I don't know. I've done minimal research on this, so fact check me if you will. There's been pushback from the people involved in this movie calling it a rom-com because they like to explore all of the aspects of relationships, friendships, male-female friendships. But I think that football scene did a good job of showing like a healthy, positive male friendship, because I think that there's another scene in this movie where Sally is telling Harry that he has to learn when he needs to control his emotions, and men really struggle with their emotions. They feel big feelings and they either suppress them until they just blow up, or they just blow up whenever they feel big feelings. They don't know how to contain themselves sometimes. And so seeing this relationship between two guys being able to fully express this thing that they're going through at a football game, where the importance isn't necessarily the football game. It is, they're both like having a conversation. Yeah, they're doing the wave and stuff, and that's humorous but like he's listening, they're talking to each other, they're having a heartfelt conversation, and that was just nice for me to see, because you don't see that very often. In a regular rom-com, his male friend would be like, oh man, he's ruining the game and I don't know what to say to him. But no, he was like helping and trying to get him through and being there, and that was nice to see.
Yeah, like it was very like it's a good friend situation, Yeah, you're right. I think in a modern, in a rom-com today, or even in other movies, there would have been that like, oh gosh, we got to get away from Harry, man. He's such a downer. And then there is a little bit of that when they're at the batting cages, and he's like, so you like her, right? And she's attractive, right? Why aren't you with her? Like what's what's holding you back here? Like there's a little bit of that, but it's coming from a place of like genuine curiosity of like you're talking about how you want to be with someone. And there's a woman that you like, and are attracted to, and she likes you, why aren't you going for that? You know, like it's coming from a place of genuine friendship, I think, even in that scenario. I think you're right. I think that the character dynamics between all the characters, like Carrie Fisher's character is hilarious, and she also, like, she wants what's best for Sally, but you know, she's her own character. She's not just like Sally's friend. She has her own thing, and when she and Kirby get together, like, they work. Like, it's for whatever reason it works, in my opinion. What about were there any other scenes or character moments stood out to you guys?
Well, look, there's one scene we gotta talk about because it's the classic scene, which is, you know, I'll have what she's having.
Yes.
To this day, I like turned it down in my apartment, and I'm in there alone. I was like, I can't have this play. You know what I mean? It's so in your face.
Yeah.
But it's hilarious.
Just
it's classic for a reason.
It's a classic, you know, and the scene wasn't even really, as far as I understand, in the script as it was. They were going to be at this diner, or this delicatessen, they were going to be talking, and they just started talking about, like, what if we were talking about fake orgasms? And then, like, Nora Ephron's working with Billy Crystal and talking about it, and then bring Meg Ryan in, and they're, like, talking about it, and Meg goes, apparently Meg Ryan said, well, what if I just did one? What if I just did a fake one? Hang on one second.
You know, and I think that scene was set up well enough because there had been a situation earlier where they were in a restaurant or something, and she blurted out, you know, I can't remember exactly what she said, but it was in regard to some kind of sex thing.
Right.
I've had great sex or something like that.
Right.
And she just blurted it out. And that was that first meeting. And so it was really a fun moment to show how they've grown. She looked like she was so embarrassed whenever that happened. And then she was brave enough to just sit down and make herself kind of act a fool and show and also prove a point at the same time. And so I think it was, again, a better scene than what the memes make it to be.
It was.
For sure.
It's so funny.
You know, there's a lot of improv moments in that in this movie beyond just that. One that I really enjoy is the scene where they're playing Pictionary together. Most of that, from my understanding, most of that was improvised. They were just playing it, and it's so funny because you still see the chemistry there even through the improv, which is just great. Again, he makes some kind of snarky comment about the drawing. He's like, "Oh yeah, it's a baby," and it's like it's so sarcastic.
Yeah, he says because he says something like baby mouth board or something.
Fish mouth.
I can't remember.
Baby fish mouth.
And he goes, baby talk, what kind of word is that? And Billy Crystal goes, oh, but baby fish mouth, this is what we know, you know, something like that. And it's just like, yes, exactly. It's like, it's a moment that, like, for me, it got a genuine laugh. Like, there's a little bit of improv. It's just like, even though if you look at some of the background details, so much of this is based on Rob Reiner's actual, maybe not actual life, but a lot of his experiences, right? And Billy Crystal talked about that he didn't even realize during his friendship with Rob Reiner, because this movie project started in like 1984. So between then, like, Rob Reiner did Stand By Me, and he did A Princess Bride, or The Princess Bride, and then so like over that time, he and Billy Crystal becoming friends. And Billy Crystal talked about, like, he didn't realize, but like he was doing research on this for this character for years just by being Rob's friend. But so much of it is that, and then just Crystal's delivery pouring through it, that, like, I don't know what it is. It's just like Harry's such a funny character, even when he's like depressed, even when he's bored. He just has a funny thing going about him. I even like, you know, there's a part where he's talking about when they meet at the airport and they're on the plane. He has this very, I'm gonna say it's very Seinfeld-esque little diatribe that he does. Obviously, it's Billy Crystal-esque because Billy Crystal and Rob Reiner probably came up with it. But he has a little bit about, you know, oh, we never take someone to the movie to the airport on the first, you know, that's when you do an early interest, because later you end up saying, why do you never take me to the airport anymore? And I was just like, that is a Seinfeld bit. Like, I can just I can just hear it in the top of my head. Anyway, like you said, the improv, the writing though is solid throughout. So like it lends to those moments where when you have a little bit of improv, it almost doesn't feel like it. It just feels natural.
Yeah, this movie was...
Did anybody guess that it was Baby Talk? Because I did. I guessed it almost immediately. I was like, Baby Talk.
Like that.
I would have, but I was too busy giggling to myself at all the different guesses.
Fair.
And Sal and Meg Ryan just going crazy with the marker.
Yeah. I wanted to add that this movie was nominated for Best Original Screenplay at the Academy Awards in 1989. It lost to Dead Poets Society, which is a great movie. So, but yes, the writing is fantastic, and it was nominated for it. So that's awesome.
I'd like to talk about Rob Reiner a little bit because
please.
One of the things that I noticed in this movie, and I said it made me feel like people cared about their movie again. Like seeing this movie, it made me feel like people didn't just want it to be green screened, didn't want it to be cheap as cheap can be, and that just mass produced to content fill, right? It in the small moments, you could tell that thought went into the scene, thought went into the background characters, and care was taken with each step of the way. And that was noticed in how it was shot. And I think Rob Reiner is obviously a great director, but he really did deliver something, and I think that he should be appreciated for that. And again, sometimes you just don't feel that anymore, especially in some rom-coms and how they're treated as just cranked out on a cheap mass way.
I think you're right.
And I think this was just really, it was a thought project, and I enjoyed seeing it. Makes me question again, what is a rom-com, and does this fit what we think? Because this leans heavy on the rom, less on the com.
I'll ton of credit to Rob Reiner. I think that he's kind of a underrated director, because I mean his films are known for having a lot of heart and for having a lot of good character, but also I think unsung, or maybe this sung, I don't know, maybe I need to read more about what people say. He's so good with locations, like the scenes in this movie with like the backdrops that are used for it. These real life locations are beautiful. Whether it's the park in the autumn, or whether it's that museum they're in, or it's the streets of New York. Just everything about this movie feels so like tangible, and that's obviously that's going back to another day in Hollywood when that's just you could shoot on location more often. You could do that kind of stuff all the time. People could shoot in America and not be a big and be easy. But yeah, you look at his other films. You look at A Princess Bride. You look at Stand By Me. You look at didn't he direct Misery? You look at these films and they have these just great scenic vistas that he's able to make a part of the film. Like New York is a character in this movie.
Yeah, it really is. And he does deserve a lot of credit for the movie because despite the screenplay being written by Nora Ephron, my understanding is he pitched the concept of this idea of a man and woman exploring whether or not they can be friends because of sex. So I do think this was he probably considered this, really, really close to him while he was making it. And there's a lot of detail in it. I can only echo what's already been said. You don't see a lot of real care in a romantic comedy anymore. And when you do, they're the ones that stand out. More recently, your movies like A Crazy Rich Asians, which is a movie that stood out as being better than what we think of as the throwaway rom-com. So it's a great movie. I'm glad that you picked it.
Yeah, and to add to the writing comment, Nora Ephron, she did a lot of interviews. She interviewed Rob. She interviewed one of the other producers on it. She interviewed just people who were working in the production company, which led to the other part I want to talk about, which is these little.
I wanted to end on
vignettes.
that too.
Yeah.
They're the only thing that I'm not sure of.
Oh, really?
I
you
just
don't like
feel
the couple
like
interviews.
It's not that I don't like the interviews. It's that I feel like sometimes they break up the story I'm watching.
I think that's what they're supposed to do, is break up the story a little bit.
I don't want it to. And that's just my personal taste. It is. I'm not like saying I'm dinging it for it. I'm just like, it's the only thing that I question because it is out of the norm.
Yeah, I think that it goes to show. I just think it's an interesting idea that I haven't seen. The only other time I've really seen anything like it is like Bernie, where like it's cut up with, starring Jack Black, where it's cut up with these interview segments with regular people. And a lot of these interviews were real interviews that Nora Ephron did with people who were on the production staff. Now they recast actors to do the parts, but some of them are just really funny. And I think that they're just moments of sort of like heartfelt levity, just kind of mixed in to also serve as these sort of like, just, like you said, just kind of like beats within the story, because you're covering these gaps in time. It's 4 months later, now it's 10 months later, and instead of just scene ends 10 years, and then 10 years later, you get this nice little thing in the middle, and it builds to this idea of the overall theme of how people meet and how they fall in love, and how relationships start. My favorite one is there's this couple that just keeps talking over each other. And they talk about how they grew up. He goes, "We were both born in the same hospital. We grew up 1 block away from each other, And they're like, I was the Bronx. I moved, And then we meet we both were in Chicago at the same time, and we met on an elevator. And I just love the ending to it, where he goes, I wrote up 9 extra floors just to keep talking to her. And she's like, 9 extra floors. Like, she's like, it's such a sweet grandparently way of meeting. Like, I was on the 3rd floor. I was on the 12th. I wrote up 9 extra floors just to talk to her. I don't know. If they weren't so well done, I could see what you mean, Josh. If they weren't so well done, if like each of those couples didn't like perfectly articulate a different idea of how people can meet, then I would agree with you. But some of them, they just touch me. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I dug them. So
yeah, it's your first time seeing them. So you liked it?
Yeah, I thought it was cute. If you're looking at it from a story structure perspective, you could argue that it doesn't make sense in what it's doing, because this is not a documentary, or is it? That's kind of the question that it makes you feel. But, again, I didn't put too much thought into it. It did feel like a nice little breakup. And sometimes it's nice to just go, oh, that was cute. Mm-hmm. Everybody has a love story. And this is ours.
Yeah. Right? And Harry and Sally, they do one at the very end.
Exactly. So I didn't have a problem with it. That, David, the one you mentioned, that also stood out to me because the timing, those 2 actors, wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They're just all on top of each other. It just it reminded me of an acting game we probably would have done in college or something. Is just like tell this, like, here's your lines, but you want to be right on top of each other as you say them. My wife,
Arsenic and Old Lace was that way.
Yeah, it's true. We're just right on top of each other. My wife also likes the one where the man walks across the room and she thinks he's going to walk over to talk to her friend, and she goes, everybody always walked over to talk to my friend, but he talked to me, and he like introduces himself. I can't remember what the name is, but he introduces himself as like, I'm Chuck Armstrong of the Staten Island Armstrongs. And she was like, and that's when I knew. I was like, my wife just loves that. She's like, why did that work? Why did that line work of the Coney Island or Waldorfs or whatever? So that was pretty funny. But yeah, anyway, I thought those were kind of sweet. It's kind of strange that, like, of all the things this movie inspired, that wasn't something that really kept up. We haven't really seen people do that. Maybe because it would feel too much like imitating When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, I think it would be, just because it is such a abnormal thing for that time period that, yeah, I think it would come across as just blatant copying. All right, well, I think that's our discussion of When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and get into the Letterboxd game here next and talk about our final thoughts on the film. All right, yeah, let's get into the Letterboxd
time
game.
in,
Yeah, drag out your trophy, you big old jerk. You two-timing jerk.
Yep.
Two-time champion David is
Two-time.
still trying to defend his trophy for the third year. Basically, if you're new to the show, what we're going to do is we are going to take a guess at what we think the Letterboxd community has rated this movie on average on a 0 to 5 scale. Each of us will guess, closest wins. If anyone hits it direct, they get 2 points. Simple as that. But before we get started, while everybody thinks about their guesses, let me take a second to read some of the most popular reviews from When Harry Met Sally on Letterboxd. Starting off hot, 4 stars, no more Tinder, just Carrie Fisher and her Rolodex picking your ideal mate. And that's a service I'd sign up for. That sounds way better than Bumble or Tinder.
The Rolodex.
Right? Those are the days. 4.5 stars, she has great hair. He has god-awful hair. Simple as that.
Mystery solved. Opposites
yeah.
do attract.
And then just 2
Meg
more.
Ryan did have great hair in this.
5 stars, 1989, Meg Ryan is the most beautiful woman in the world. Billy Crystal is probably part goblin, but I love him too.
That might
Which
be
is
Andy's
just
event.
unnecessarily mean, right?
People being mean to Billy. This is not nice, not cool.
No. And finally, 4.5 stars. My dad muted the fake orgasm scene, but then my mom grabbed the remote and turned the volume back on. What an icon.
5 stars for her mom, or that
5
person's
stars
mother.
for her mom,
Speaking
yes. 5
Speaking of
for
mothers,
you,
I don't know if you
Coco.
guys acknowledged, but that was Rob Reiner's mother who said, I'll have what she said.
Yes. She was the one who delivers that line, and I meant to mention, I forgot, but when Estelle Reiner died, the New York Times published an obituary and called that one of the most memorably funny lines in movie history, and that's quite a compliment. She delivers it very well.
I wholeheartly agree, too.
So, upon hearing those honestly glowing reviews for everyone except Billy Crystal's appearance, what are you guys thinking? Who do we start with this week, David? Who's the first guess?
Well, you guys are in the lead, so you're tied for the lead, so I think I go first.
You do.
I think
We all get
whoever's-
to
I
go
think-
first for our own movies. I like that.
Yeah. I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna. This is kind of one you don't see very often. I'm gonna guess a 3.7.
Okay. 3.7.
It's a good one.
is a good
That's a good one. Are we both tied? Did we both get direct hits, David?
You did. Yeah, you both got direct hits for your own
snap.
films.
Oh, are you going to three-peat it? We'll find out.
I don't know. That would be amazing. That never
It
happened.
would be honestly impressive if you did.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I hate it when the first one picks a spot where I can't decide if I want to over or undercut you.
This is where the boys become men.
I'm gonna. Or do you want to go first, Garrett? Or you want me to go first?
No, go
Okay,
for it, please.
Okay.
No, I know.
I'm just gonna go for gold, and I'm gonna guess it's 4.2. I'm gonna go way up.
Man, I feel like I could just sandwich you with both and like land in a spot where we're either tie breaking or
You good? The world is your oyster.
somebody's won.
You good? I think so.
My initial thought was like a 3.8. And so I think I think I'll stick with that. I think I'm going to do a 3.8.
3.8.
Okay, so you're gonna going up just by 0.1 over David. David had 3.7. Garrett had 3.8. I went up to 4.1.
If it's in the fours, I'm gonna be happy and angry at the same time.
Let's see. Drum roll. That was more of a trumpet than a drum roll.
I liked it though. Change it up.
Trumpets are good.
A trumpet brigade.
So we do not have a direct hit this week. I did do math real quick. We do not need a tiebreaker.
Okay.
This movie is an even 4.0, which is going to make me the winner. 5.1.
Did you guess 4.1?
I guess 4.1. Garrett guessed 3.8.
Oh, okay. There you go. Yeah. Josh wins. Well, good for Josh.
Sorry, Charlies.
Don't you feel proud of yourself?
It won't last. It never has. 3 years it hasn't lasted.
Harry, I think you may have won the first when we did the
Back
Rotten
when we
Tomatoes
didn't
game,
have
I
a
think
trophy
you
to
were-
prove it. Yeah, I bet. Oh,
So
man.
Josh wins with
Hey,
Harry
I don't
Met
know.
Sally.
This
That's
is-
1 point. That puts Josh in the lead with 3 points.
This is the first year that we've enacted this whole new system.
Yeah.
We evolved over time last year because David was just running away with it.
I'm running away. It was no contest for a long time, and then it became a pretty close contest towards the end. But yeah, hey, here we go. 3 episodes in, scoreless over here. Josh has got 3, Garrett's got 2, so we'll see if it lasts. If I remember right, last year it was around the time we watched 65 that everything went downhill for Josh and everybody.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that was about it. Okay, well, what are our final scores for the movie? We got to have at least 1.5 in here, right? No?
Maybe. I'm gonna give it 4 stars myself.
Okay.
I really like it. Generally speaking, though, it's not really my type of movie. Like, it's not the kind of movie that I'm going to rush back to very often. That said, I think it's about as good as it can be. And is it dated at times? A little bit. But there's still enough charm. There's still enough humor. The characters are still good enough. Writing's still good enough to really make it a great film. So 4 stars, which is, in my category, is great. And if I was just more of a rom-com guy, or if there was just something else here that is a little bit speaks more to me, then I could go higher. I could probably be talked up higher, but 4 stars for me.
Okay.
Ditto on my end.
Ditto on both your ends. Ditto on both your houses. I'm going to give it 5 stars.
Well, there you go.
Which
There you go.
I just don't have a case against it for me personally. So, yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna give it a 5. I think 2 4s and a 5 is probably pretty close to 4.5 on an average scale. I don't want to do the math, so that's exciting though. We've had 3 good, I think, movies, varying quality, but good conversations out of all of them. I think.
Oh yeah,
it's been
yeah.
a really good month of So Many Sweethearts.
Yeah, this
I
is just
agree.
like Brendan Fraser area where we started off hot.
Yeah.
Things are going well. What will be this year's 65?
Yeah, it will happen. I was going to say, or will it? It will.
Yeah, well, no,
Who
it'll
am I
never
kidding?
happen. We're gonna, only good movies here.
Only good
That's
movies.
so many
Yeah.
sequels, except for Reindeer Games.
Well, we do have one more movie coming up for So Many Sweethearts, which is going to be the fan pick. We talked about that earlier in the show. We've got a lot of suggestions from you guys. So we're going to put those up on our social media accounts. Be sure to check out our Instagram at So Many Sequels Pod, our Threads account attached to that. We're going to put some polls out on those, probably in the stories. We'll add that all together and we'll pick a winner. And the fan pick will be what we review next week. So we're very excited about that. And we got more great stuff coming up. You know, the Oscars are next month. So what better time now than any to suggest that maybe we have an Oscars theme coming up, and maybe some listeners should start thinking of potential fan picks that have been nominated for an Oscar. We'll get into that more next week, but something to start thinking about. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube if you haven't done that yet. You can find, I was going to say every episode, not every episode, but you can find quite a few of our back catalog on our YouTube account. So Many Sequels there as well. We're pushing for our next goal of 121 subscribers. We're going to get there. I can feel it in my bones. We're chugging along.
We're at 112.
Really nice.
We're so close already.
Yeah.
We're such a modest bunch. I love it.
Yes. And of course, follow us elsewhere: Facebook, TikTok, Patreon. If you want to support the show directly, you can join us there, and you'll get access to our Discord, where you can hang out with us and talk about movies. Last weekend we were posting stuff about Super Bowl trailers. We were dropping trailers in there. We were dropping posters in there. We're dropping articles. It's good stuff. So again, So Many Sequels on Patreon. That's about it. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts if you're into that sort of thing. And you can find links to all of our past episodes at so manysequels.com. We'll see you guys next week.